Without its border with Lincolnshire, Northamptonshire or Northants is a double landlocked county, surrounded by counties with no coastline. Only the very short border with Lincolnshire denies this. This makes Northants very much in the middle of the country and, rather than being the focus of one particular thing, is a conduit and feeder of rivers which make up for much of its borders, the Welland, Great Ouse, Avon and Cherwell, and the arguably pronounced River Nen, which shall remain pronounced this way except when referring to it east of Thrapston. Most of Northants rivers flow from west to east, which makes railway building challenging as England's two largest cities at the time of railway growth were London and Birmingham and required a south to northwest route. This meant bridges and tunnels and long tracks of fairly flat landscape as steam locomotives in the early days lacked the traction required for the gradients of today. Near the village of Watford lies a space in the hills of the Midlands that provides fairly level access, and the Romans knew this when building Watling Street, which later became the A5. The navvies were thankful of this from engineers who laid canals here. Later railways took advantage of the space too, and now the name is synonymous of the difference between the north and south of England and the pronunciations of Bath and grass. The Watford Gap, renowned as a location for road services to allow respite for the traveller, has a place in musical myth and lyrical legend. Historically, where Leicestershire was pants, Northants was a load of cobblers, and boot and shoemaking legends such as Loke, Lob, Grenson, Churches, Trickers, Barker and Cleverley expanded due to the close proximity of the raw materials needed to treat leather and remain some of the handful of survivors of an industry that boasted over 2,000 makers. Also, the geology sits on ironstone, particularly in the Corby area, where British Steel were churning out long-grain steel for a long-lasting permanent way, despite at one time being the largest town without a railway station. Other industries were prevalent, such as brewing and paper production, but Cromwell's army marched on Northants leather. Today, the county's largest employers include Weetabix, Carlsberg, Avon, Siemens and Golden Wonder. King John defended Northampton Castle from his own barons, and later King Charles II ordered it to be destroyed beyond any use following the English Civil War. There it remained as ruins until the LNWR bought what remained and built their railway station on top and dug up any remains save for a minor archway which was dismantled and built into the wall of the station. The biggest deliveries of freight were what was dug from the ground, and millions of tons of ironstone, granite, brick and tiles required dozens of sidings, some of which I have captured in this brief history of Northamptonshire's railways. Note that in many cases I used the later names of the railways where before there were many constituent lines which have not been mentioned due to map space, such as the forerunners of the Stratford-upon-Avon and Midland Junction Railway. So let's get some background to the timeline of railway history and set the scene against the backdrop of the county outline and its geography. Northants is surrounded by 9 counties and is the source of many rivers, including the 5th longest, the Great Ouse, and the UK's 10th longest, the Nen. The London and Birmingham completed its 2 phases in 1838 and opened a depot at Wolverton. The Midland Counties Railway heading south from Nottingham reached Rugby via Leicester in 1840. In 1844 they merged to form the Midland Railway. In 1845, Northampton's first railway, a branch line from Blisworth to Peterborough via Wellingborough, Thrapston and Wansford opened, forming the Northampton and Peterborough Railway. This was followed in 1846 by the branch line from Bletchley to Bedford and the formation of the London North Western Railway and the first connection of the Midlands, Syston and Peterborough line from Stamford. Rugby was now a junction station and in 1847 extended a branch to Stafford via Coventry and Birmingham, and in 1848, following the issues with Lord Harborough, Midlands, Syston and Peterborough line was complete. In 1850 the Rugby and Stamford Railway, which crisscrossed the Welland in and out of Northants, opened as far as Rockingham, facing challenges at the Moorcock Tunnel. The same year saw Banbury open and quickly became a 2-company station with both the Great Western from Oxford and the LNWR from Verney Junction via Brackley. The Rugby and Stamford completed in 1851 as part of the LNWR, who also connected Leamington to Rugby and Oxford to Bedford via Bletchley. This became known as the Varsity Line, with intention to connect the university towns of Oxford and Cambridge, and had been discussed as early as 1846. On the very edges of their empires, the Great Western pushed ahead from their terminus at Banbury to Warwick in 1852, and the Great Northern bypassed Stamford in favour of Peterborough on their Towns line to London King's Cross. It was the Midlands' turn to reach London in 1857, but due to lack of investors during the Crimean War, the railway only reached Hitchin. It was plunging deep into LNWR territory. The LNWR had built Market Harborough for the Midland, who had delayed entering the town. In 1859, the LNWR extended to Market Harborough from Northampton Castle, flattening the old castle site and destroying anything remaining, arriving into a shared and jointly run Market Harborough, which gradually became congested as 6 routes shared 2 platforms. Whilst quarrying was nothing new, at Desborough the quarry had a siding to feed to the main line and was the first of many having access to the rail network. From Bedford in 1862, the Varsity Line continued to Cambridge, crossing the GNR at Sandy. A new Midland railway opened from Kettering to Huntingdon via a new station at Thrapston in 1866, and Towcester gained its first railway station with the Stratford-on-Avon, Towcester and Midland Junction Railway from Olney at Ravenstone Junction to Cockley Hill. This company was a constituent of the later Stratford-upon-Avon and Midland Junction Railway. In 1867, the Marquis of Exeter's privately owned Stamford and Essendine Railway extended to Snibson, with the GNR running it for 50% of income and for access to Wansford, now a junction station. In the same year, a single line to Newport Pagnell was opened, with the LNWR absorbing it in 1875. It was intended to extend to Olney, with some earthworks completed but soon abandoned. London St Pancras was completed in 1868, and the line from Bedford finally reached London via Luton. Trains initially terminated at Kentish Town before the final and most expensive section was complete. In 1871, the East and West Junction Railway completed between Stratford and Fenny Compton via Burton Dasset, where a station named Warwick Road ran for less than 2 years. The Midland, wanting to reach Northampton, created a branch from north of Bedford to a third station for the town at St John's in 1872. King's Sutton, one of Northant's few remaining stations, opened as well. In 1873, the SMJR extended from Towcester to Fenny Compton via Woodford, though their station was at Byfield. This crafted some connection to ironstone quarries which were popping up at Blisworth and Irchester and Gayton in 1874. 1879 saw a lot of activity. The Midland built their alternative route from Nottingham via Melton to Kettering, opening Corby's first station and passing under several tunnels, and the 82-arch Haringworth Viaduct, which employed over 1,500 men and 10 million bricks. During construction, it was noted that the area was rich in ironstone, and it is for this reason the Great Northern and London North Western Joint Railway opened, passing through Melton. The LNWR also completed their route to Peterborough from Seaton, which passed near the Haringworth Viaduct and went through Nassington, another rich ironstone pit. Northampton Town finally got onto the West Coast Main Line in 1881, when the LNWR created the Northampton Loop through Castle Station and onto Long Buckby before rejoining the main line at Crick. At Banbury in 1882, the LNWR opened their own station at Merton Street, and the Great Northern extended into Leicester at Belgrave Hall from the joint line at Marefield Junction. This was mostly passenger and retail goods. Stations in Leicester were renamed. In 1884, Desborough Ironstone Quarry closed. With the LNWR now with their own station at Banbury, the Great Western were able to open their 1887 extension from Cheltenham into the freed platforms. In 1888, the LNWR opened a branch from Weedon to Daventry into a station made almost entirely of wood. Churchstowe Iron Quarry opened in 1890 and Blisworth closed, but the siding now served a brickworks, making room for expansion of the SMJR from Oakley to Towcester in 1892. In 1893, Higham Ferrers opened a double-track branch from Wellingborough Platform 3, calling via Rushton. In 1894, the single-track line to Uppingham opened, creating a shuttle service from Seaton. The line looped back under Haringworth Viaduct, Several ironstone quarries opened on the line from the outset. The LNWR extended from Daventry in 1895, including a siding from the extensive southern cement works already covering the parishes of Long Itchington, Stockton and Southam. Lime had previously been delivered by barge to Leamington. On the 15th of March 1899, the Great Central Railway's London extension was completed and opened to passenger traffic, having been running goods trains for the previous 6 months to embed the permanent way. It was the last main line to be built prior to High Speed 1. My previous video was about the Great Central Extension should you wish to know more. In 1904, Thorpe Underwood Quarry joined the main line. Extension of the Great Central was opened in 1906 from Woodford to Banbury to mitigate the problems they had with sharing tracks with the Metropolitan line following Edward Watkins' departure. Ironstone quarries continued to pop up in 1912 at Scaldwell, 1915 at Byfield, 1916 at Charwelton and Edge Hill in 1922 as Blisworth Brickworks closed. The Grouping Act of 1921 became effective on the 1st of January 1923, with railways allocated to their new parent companies. The following year saw nomenclature issues and lots of name changes to prevent customer confusion at Wellingborough, Bedford and Thrapston. Quarries were exhausted at Gayton in 1925, Thorpe Underwood in 1926, and the first victim of the Grouping Act was the Sibson extension to the Stamford and Essendine in 1929. The Edge Hill Light Railway had ceased to be, but remained in place for further development. In the 1930s, ironstone quarrying burst into action around Corby. There are so many in this dotted area that I do not have space to include them all, and they may be a feature of a future video. 1939, Nassington Iron Quarry commenced production and Northampton St John's Station closed to passengers but continued to be a goods station. Central Munitions Stores opened at Kyneton in 1941 and at Yardley Chase in 1942. At one time, the two depots stored 75% of the UK's munitions. Lamport Ironstone Quarry also burst into life. Loddington Ironstone was connected to the main line in 1946. Soon, quarries started to use the road, so closure dates refer to the removal of the sidings. The railways were nationalised in 1948 and all were absorbed into one body, British Rail. They remain in colour on this map. Cuts followed the formation, as they also did following the 1955 modernisation plan and then during the Beeching era of the mid-1960s. The Royal Army Ordnance Corps at Weedon was disconnected from the main line in 1950 and Brackley renamed its stations. First closures quickly came. In 1951, the old SMJR line from Northampton to Banbury was removed to Towcester, and then the rest in 1952. In 1958, Towcester became a terminus station from the junction station it had been just 6 years earlier. The first phase of the M1 opened in 1959 with an extension, the M45 to Thurleston. The Uppingham branch, serving mostly school children, closed in 1960, followed by the Rugby branch of the Midland Railway through Wigston, Charwelton Quarries and Brackley Town Station. Richard Beeching was appointed chairman of the British Railways Board. In 1962, the Great Northern and London North Western joint line closed almost in its entirety, as did Bedford's branch to Northampton, with the long-closed St John's Station. Iron quarries closed in 1963 at Scaldwell and Lamport, and Thrapston Midland Road Station closed. Beeching's reshaping of British Railways is published, highlighting 5,000 miles of track to be removed at the cost of 70,000 jobs and an £18 million saving. In 1964, Labour comes to power. Bedford to Hitchin closes. Cheltenham to Banbury closes. Tom Fraser, Scottish miner, trade unionist, MP and Transport Minister, informs the House of Commons that Dr Beeching will return to ICI in 1965. In 1965, the M1 extends to Leicester and road traffic increases as rail use dwindles. Beeching unveils the double arrow BR symbol still in use today as part of his second report detailing trunk route closures. Northampton to Wansford closes, Towcester to Fenny Compton closes, Weedon to Southam closes, disconnecting Daventry from the railway network. Beeching returns to ICI, having finished his secondment. In 1966, closures continue under the Labour government. The Rugby and Stamford closes, the Great Central south of Rugby closes, Beeching becomes Barron Beeching, Seaton to Nassington closes, Banbury to Verney Junction closes, Rugby to Leamington closes. The Bedford to Cambridge Varsity line closes in 1967, 3 years into the Labour government. Newport Pagnell and its branch close. 1969, the Dart Valley Railway between Totnes and Ashburton is opened as a heritage line. The red ribbon is cut by Barron Beeching. The remainder of the Great Central closes. Higham Ferrers branch closes. Midland Railways Kettering to Huntingdon closes, and Thrapston is without a railway station. Irchester Ironstone Quarry closes in 1971 as the M6 opens. The Conservatives are back in power. Nassington closes, as does the remaining branch to Peterborough. Friends of the Nene Valley Railway form a group and have the Fletton Loop installed with financial assistance from Peterborough Council in 1974. And in 1977 the Nene Valley Railway opens from Peterborough to Wansford. Ironstone in the Corby area ceases production in the 1970s. MOD Yardley Chase closes in 1980. Despite attempts at running a service, the line from Northampton to Market Harbour closes in 1981. Southern Cement and its branch to Leamington is removed 1985. The site is still quarried, but the cement works were demolished in 2011. In 1988, Bedford is renamed, losing Midland Road. The East-West A14 was completed in 1990 and Churchstowe Quarry is disconnected from the railway. The Oxford to Bletchley line closes in 1993. In 1995, the Lamport Heritage Railway opens. Daventry International Freight Terminal opens in 1997. In 2007, the Nene Valley Railway extends to Yarwell. In 2009, the Rushton Heritage Transport Society opens on the old Higham Ferrers branch. First section of the East-West Railway is proposed to connect in 2025 from the old Oxford to Bletchley line. Rugby Parkway Station is proposed to open in 2026. The second phase of the old Varsity line, the East-West Railway, is forecast to open in 2030. I have presented you today with the facts, especially surrounding those of the politics of the time and an analysis of the Beeching era. Beeching himself was a first-class analyst and possibly the saviour of the railways, which was hemorrhaging money since the end of the war and in uncontrollable debt. At a Western Region Society golf dinner, he once remarked that it pays off if you have a sticky problem to work out the answer, create chaos, and then offer up the solution. He is regarded amongst his peers as a considerate, friendly, imperturbable, determined, courageous, and deep down very sensitive. His character was strengthened by the pawky sense of humour that eased his path through life and endeared him to those who knew him. His obituary records visiting a station lavatory to be confronted with graffiti stating, "Beeching is a prat," and taking out a pen he added, "No, I'm not." After the railways he went on to streamline the out-of-date judicial system. He was honest, scrupulously fair, and grasped technical and legal detail and jargon and his understanding of the people he met. Do you think that these railways would have survived and gained passengers? What would Towcester and Thrapston be like today with a railway? Do you remember these long-gone lines? Please leave a comment, like and subscribe for more brief histories.